What's going on, guys? Zuko back with another War Within video. We are going to look at WILDSTALKER Druid today. Took this through a dungeon, and I was on stream last night, and we tried a lot of different build variations. And the beta is down right now, otherwise I would be showing you this from inside the beta. So we're just going to look at it on Wowhead here. This is the build that I ended up running. This is the class tree down here. This doesn't really matter as much. I think fluid form is pretty good in terms of... it's just a nice little bonus in case you do end up having to get out of feral druid form to cast like a rebirth on somebody. For example, which I had to do here. You can shift right back into feral form with one quick shred or rake, which I thought was actually really good. You're saving yourself like an entire GCD, right? Actually, 2 GCDs. One getting into feral form, or sorry, one getting into human form, casting rebirth. I think you can actually do that with 1 GCD. But then getting back into feral form and then pressing the rake or the shred, this saves you that GCD there. So that's really good. The rest of it is kind of whatever. You can do what you want. You know, Astral Influence doesn't matter anymore because they took away the melee range bonus from this. So you don't need to take this anymore. So that's that side. And then on the spec tree, I ended up taking Brutal Slash, which I think was completely mandatory. Right now, they have like utterly tanked Feral Druid's energy regeneration, and it's really driving me crazy. And I don't know, let me know if you guys play Feral Druid like full time, because this is not my main, but this is really frustrating to me as somebody who would love to get into Feral Druid. I would love to play it, but the play style is so frustrating because you have no energy regen. They seriously like destroyed how often Omen of Clarity procs compared to what it used to, which makes your multiple abilities free, right? Which in the video you'll see it wasn't actually like, it wasn't showing on, it wasn't like making my abilities light up. They kind of tanked this. They reduced the amount of energy and energy regen that Tireless Energy gives you, which is very frustrating as well. They changed how Raging Fury works. You can't extend Tiger's Fury for a really long time anymore. You could still take the 5-second duration, which takes it from a 15 seconds to a 20-second duration, which is really good. Actually, it says 10 there. Maybe it's 10 to 15, actually. I thought it went to 20. I'm not really sure why that's saying that. Either way, I tried Tiger's Tenacity in this dungeon just to try it. Because it added the extra bonus of Tiger's Fury, increasing the periodic damage of your bleeds by an additional 10%, and we're doing a bleed build with WILDSTALKER. So we'll have to see. I tried everything I could to conserve as much energy as possible. Like Thrashing Claws makes it so that every time I hit Brutal Slash or Shred, it'll automatically cast Thrash for me, so I'm saving energy there by pressing one button and it giving me 2 ability casts. So I don't have to use the energy of casting both. I have 1 point in Tireless Energy because that's all I could really afford to do. You have to take things like Double Clawed Rake and you have to come down here. I think that Rip and Tear might not be as good as Vein Ripper now, but I didn't get a chance to test that in this dungeon. I do have Circle of Life and Death. And then I took Adaptive Swarm just for fun. I just wanted to experiment with this because I was doing a WILDSTALKER build. The growths, the Bloodseeker vines that you put on enemies do in fact count as a bleed, and they count as a damage over time effect. So Adaptive Swarm buffs your damage over time effects by 25%. So the vines that you put on enemies are substantial. They do a lot of damage. So I thought maybe buffing them would be kind of cool. And then I went for Bloodseeker vines have a chance to create an additional vine of the same type whenever you create one, so you can get a bunch of vines kind of sprouting all at the same time. And then I went for the longer lasting vines, and then if a target affected by the vine dies, it's going to jump to a nearby enemy. So again, hopefully keeping the vines up as much as possible while keeping my swarms going around as much as possible. And then all of my dots are doing more damage faster because of Circle of Life and Death. So I actually think the play moving forward is to take Circle of Life and Death and to take Vein Ripper, because that makes those 3 dots last long enough that you can fit your enough ferocious bites in between. Because if you guys don't know, the way Feral kind of operates now is that you're not pressing Primal Wrath over and over and over again and consuming part of the Primal Wrath buff. You're pressing Primal Wrath as a 10 or 12 second maintenance buff, and then you're using Ferocious Bite as your filler. And that's kind of how that ends up working. Let's just jump into the video. So yeah, I think like overall, this was my favorite build of Feral. This was my, like, the best performing build that I had. Now, somebody in my chat while I was doing this was talking about another one of their Feral Druid buddies who did a lot more damage than I did overall in a dungeon, in like a rookery. I think he did like 700k overall in a rookery. You're going to see over here in this dungeon, we do a decent amount of overall damage, but it's not 700k. Now, that could be because they were pulling really, really large packs of mobs together in the rookery, and he's popping Incarn and doing a whole bunch of AoE damage like for free. Like, these numbers they're just numbers. They might end up changing. They probably will change. So just keep that in mind. But here's kind of that first pack that I killed there. Rampant Ferocity is doing lots of damage. You're going to see your Rampant Ferocity damage is going to be pretty high. Let me just check the... This should be high. Your Rampant Ferocity damage should be pretty high because, again, you're filling with Ferocious Bite now instead of filling with Primal Wrath. Primal Wrath is just I think it's like a 10-second maintenance buff when you take Circle of Life and Death. So you can see our damage here is pretty good. We're getting a bunch of Ferocious Bites off. It's doing lots of cleave damage. It's actually not bad at all. I experimented with a whole bunch of different builds. I tried Incarn. I tried Convoke. I tried 1 minute Convoke, like Super Convoke. That one felt okay, but again, all of these builds felt like I was consistently running out of energy. And that to me is something that we are going to hopefully be able to solve once we get enough haste going in our builds. If you don't know, they're adding in some haste scaling to Feral Druid. Besides the fact that haste actually buffs your energy regen. Like right now in this dungeon, I have 8% haste. So like it's terrible, right? It's not good at all. I'm wondering if haste is going to become a really, really big stat for Feral Druid. If you're going to potentially get like large amounts of haste to buff your energy regen because it's dog water right now. It's terrible. Also to buff your dots doing damage more quickly. Which you already kind of get with Circle of Life and Death, so maybe that's not the play, I don't know. But also because there's a new addition to the Predator talent, which says your combo point generating abilities direct damage is increased by 40% of your haste. So let's say you had 30% haste, okay? 40% of that is about 14% or so. Let's call it 14%. So all of your combo point generating abilities would do 14% more damage simply because you're investing into the haste stat, which the haste stat is going to be good for you anyway, gives you energy regen, dot damage, you know what I'm saying? So also auto attack speed, it gives you a bunch of auto attack speed, which is good for Druid of the Claw, which is not WILDSTALKER, but Druid of the Claw is the other hero talent tree that allows you to get Ravage procs. That's based on your auto attack. So your clear casting is also based on your auto attacks, right? So the more haste you have, the more auto attack speed you have. I think there might be genuine scaling now for Feral Druid with haste, which is something that we haven't seen in an incredibly long time. And I think that part of the way that Blizzard has done this is that they've nerfed your energy regen so hard that they're like forcing you, I think, to go into haste, which I don't like. I do not like that direction. I really don't like that. But there might end up being a build for Feral Druid, particularly with WILDSTALKER, where you are investing into haste / crit. You still want crit for the extra combo point generation from Primal Fury on your class tree, right? But maybe now getting haste is going to help to supplement the energy regen and then the dots. It's going to make everything feel a lot smoother because right now it feels okay with this build that I was cooking up, but it still doesn't feel great. Like our single target damage here is still pretty bad. Mobs don't last that long in heroic dungeons right now, so just keep that in mind. Mobs don't last very long at all, and that's really contributing to the fact that our damage doesn't get time to ramp up. But even on the fights that do last a little bit longer, I wish my damage was higher. It feels like I'm really sweating to try and get my damage going versus a lot of the other specs that I've played, like, you know, Arms Warrior, Colossus Arms Warrior, or Stormbringer Tempest Shaman, or even, you know, Frost DK, Deathbringer Frost DK, or Rider of the Apocalypse Frost DK. I mean, all those specs, or Paladin, Rep Paladin, any of the Rep Paladin hero talent trees, they just have to press a few buttons and they're just automatically doing crazy amounts of AoE damage, and even their single target damage is okay. So I'm not saying the damage here is bad. it's actually looking okay, but it still doesn't feel great to play. That's my like, that'd be my big like TLDR for this whole video, is that the damage is actually fine. I feel like it doesn't feel wonderful to play Feral still. It still doesn't feel good. And I'm wondering if you solve that problem with haste, or if Blizzard is going to maybe make some tweaks, some adjustments, so that it feels better to play this thing, and that maybe more people will actually be inclined to play it. Because right now, even though it can do damage, it doesn't feel good to do that damage. Does that make sense? So yeah, I just wanted to highlight some of that in this video. This is like the best version of the build I came up with. I don't think it's necessarily the best build. This does include Adaptive Swarm. Again, trying to buff the damage of all my dots, including my Bloodseeker Vine, which is on there right now. So I have Swarm and Thrash and Rake and my Bloodseeker Vine. I'm missing my Rip damage, but I was stunned right now from this guy that jumps on you. And then I had to get Zan back up. Now this is cool, right? So I hit Rebirth. That puts you in human form right away. Then I hit Shred and I go right back into cat form. So that's that fluid form I'm talking about. Really enjoyable the way that they've made that work. I think that that's fantastic. Yeah, this is the best build that I've come up with so far. I really do think that there's going to be some changes to the way that you build your talent tree. I think that Brutal Slash is still like an essential component right now because it does so much more AoE damage. And I'm not running Blood Talons. Like, you could absolutely run Blood Talons, and then you're doing, you know, Brutal Slash, Rake, and that's when you would do Thrash. So with this build, you can't really run Blood Talons because I don't have that at third dot to press to buff my next Rips or Ferocious Bites. So, but I think you could do a Blood Talons build. It's probably just better. I was just trying to figure out a way to conserve my energy as much as possible. And I was able to kind of do that in this dungeon. But again, I'm guessing with the scaling of the expansion, as you get more stats, as you get more crit and more haste, you're going to be generating way more combo points with your crits because you're going to be critting more often. That's going to immediately generate 2 combo points instead of 1. That's going to feel fantastic. And then your haste, I think, is going to potentially take care of a lot of your energy regen problems. With Druid of the Claw, you actually get 20 extra energy and 8% more energy regen. And that node feels very significant. I wonder once again if Blizzard nerfed the baseline energy regen on Feral just so that they could buff, like give you some of that back with the Druid of the Claw tree, which again I would really hate if that's what they were actually doing, because it did kind of makes WILDSTALKER feel a little bit worse, right? So I don't know. I'm not sure what's up with Blizzard and Feral Druid. I'm honestly kind of angry about it. Like, it feels frustrating to me that every single patch cycle, there's like 15 paragraphs on all the mage changes that are happening and how amazing mage is feeling. And if you jump into a dungeon and you play Rep Paladin, they're overflowing with resources and damage. Every single one of Rep Paladin's abilities does AoE damage, basically. Like Judgment's AoE damage. Blade of Wrath can go AoE. Your Crusader Strike can hit everybody if you do Crusading Strikes. And then, like, it just, I don't know. Your Wake of Ashes does AoE damage, or... it feels like there's other specs in the game that just get way, way, way more love than Feral does, and I don't understand why Blizzard is so, like, hesitant to just give them some of the buffs I feel like they really need. It just doesn't make sense at all. Why are we nerfing Feral when Mage gets patch notes that buff them every single cycle? Every single cycle. Why? Why is that happening? That doesn't make any sense to me. So I really hope that they take a hard look at Feral and just the way that it feels to play. If they want people to come in and play their game and to actually try out every single spec, Feral Druid's one of the coolest looking specs in the game. Everybody wants to be a cool cat, putting bleeds on people and doing big ferocious bites. Like, I would love to be doing this and to feel like it was on par with the other specs, but I'm telling you right now, it just doesn't quite feel that way. It's not terrible. It's not bad, I wouldn't say. But, like, my damage is always going to be lower than somebody else's damage. And that just doesn't feel good. And I'm trying, I feel like, twice as hard. It feels like you're kind of trying twice as hard to do less damage than everybody. Not everybody, but always, you're never going to be top damage, basically. And I don't know. It just baffles me, guys. It just kind of baffles me. I'm not even a Feral Druid main, and I can understand your pain. I know that Feral Druid's in an okay spot right now in Dragonflight, but I feel like that's just because we're at the end of the expansion and your stats are out of control, right? You're probably sitting at 50% plus haste, or crit, sorry, and you're probably sitting at like 60 or 70% mastery, and so everything just hits like a bus, and you're always critting, so you're always generating extra combo points. Like, I feel like that's the case, right, when you're at the end of an expansion. But this is going to be going into the early part of an expansion. I'm really tired of certain specs in the game just feeling like crap in the early sections of an expansion. I don't know why Blizzard can't just give them some help that way. So I feel like if Feral could get a little bit of love in the early part of an expansion like this, it would be really, really good. So other than that, the AoE damage is quite good. I think it feels all right. Again, we need some energy regen help, but you can see I'm sort of keeping up there with the Ellie Shaman in this AoE pack that we were doing. It's pretty easy to apply your dots. I think that you need to have energy regen saving talents on your bar in the early parts of an expansion, which this is representing the early part of an expansion, because it's just impossible to generate resources otherwise. I don't think Feral Swarm is necessarily the play. It might be with WILDSTALKER. Like, there's a chance here that it's just the play with what, because you're focusing on dot damage, but you can't really control whether or not you're going to have a Bloodseeker Vine and a Adaptive Swarm on the same target at the same time. That's not always, you can't like guarantee that. So that's kind of tough. That's a tough sell for me, especially because the actual Bloodseeker Vines that you put on enemies, they don't last very long. It's like 8 seconds, right? So you can't like set that up appropriately and make sure that you're guaranteeing. Now, in a situation like this, this is perfectly ideal. I've got Rip and Rake. I've got my Adaptive Swarm, I have the Bloodseeker Vine, and I have Thrash. So all 5 dots on the primary enemy. This is what you want. This is where your damage should be going up pretty high. And you can see I'm starting to catch up, getting up to almost 500k here on this 3-target cleave. Now, again, the Fury Warrior is just blowing us out of the water, so I wish that kind of wasn't the case, but we'll see. As we get into the new expansion, I would say, for Feral Druid, we're going to have to wait and see how this ends up lining up. I think single target damage is still a bit of a struggle in the Mythic Plus environment, because you're not spec'd for single target. You have to spec into some AoE stuff, and you can't like fully spec into single target. So that hurts your single target in a Mythic Plus environment when you're fighting these bosses. But it's, again, it's not terrible. It's not the best. And it doesn't feel the best to play. That is the biggest point I want to make. If this wasn't doing the greatest amount of damage, but like felt really smooth all the time to play and felt really amazing, then I wouldn't have as much of an issue with it. But no matter what variation of the builds that I was trying, even if I was trying Incarn, I was still running out of energy. You can see my energy is like bottoming out here. Even with something like Incarn, my energy was really low. Inside my major cooldown, I don't have enough energy regen to keep pressing buttons. That is not okay. That is just not okay. I don't care what my secondary stats are. That should never happen. If I'm inside my major cooldown, my 2-minute cooldown, that should just never be the case, right? And I feel like that alone is a very simple fix that they could make for Fury. Just make it so that if you're in Berserk or Incarn, I don't know, all your combo point spenders are free. Like, why isn't that a case? Why isn't that the case? It makes no sense to me. It's only a 15-second duration every 2 minutes. That's not that crazy. So, like, I feel like they should just make it so that when you're in Incarn, when you're in Berserk, your spenders are free. Nothing costs anything. Like, I don't know, that just feels easy to me, like an easy fix that they should do. But we did almost 500k overall. I'm actually happy with that in terms of Feral Druid. That's the best that I think I've done so far. Again, it's not amazing. It could be a lot better, but that's just the way that it is. So here's the breakdown of the damage. Rip, big damage. Brutal Slash, very, very good. There's my Ferocious Bite and Rampant Ferocity. Again, you are filling with Ferocious Bite now. You're not just filling with Primal Wrath over and over and over again. So you're going to see this be a much bigger part of your damage. And then Rake, there's our Bloodseeker Vines doing 9% of our damage. And then Bursting Growth is actually pretty big. That's when you press Ferocious Bite on an enemy that has a Bloodseeker Vine on them. It splashes and does AoE damage. So that's pretty cool. That's coming from our hero talent tree as well, which is really, really good. And then you can see the rest of them there. Adaptive Swarm not doing the most amount of damage for me, but it was more so about trying to buff my other dots, including my Bloodseeker Vine. So I don't know. It's potentially something we could do, but let me know what you guys think about this in the comments down below. What do you think about this potential build? Are you happy with the state of Feral on the beta? If you're trying Feral on the beta right now, let me know if you're happy with the way that it is. Link me a build in the comments that you think I should have been running. Let me know what you think maybe I could have done better to help conserve energy, because I feel like right now I just feel terrible about the state of Feral in terms of its energy regen especially, and it makes me not want to play the spec. So if there's a better way to do it that I'm not understanding, I would love to hear from any of you down in the comments down there. You know, just know this is obviously not my main. I'm not amazing at this. There's probably some obvious things I'm not doing correctly, but I just wish that Feral felt better to play from somebody who isn't a Feral main, like newbies, you know. I feel like it would be nice for people to be able to get into Feral Druid and get into the Mythic Plus environment and not feel terrible about it. Does that make sense? So let me know what you think in the comments down below. I will continue to do the War Within videos. We'll have more coming. This week is a very exciting week for Hunters, so stay tuned for some Hunter videos because everything's changing for them very soon. Thanks for watching. Love you all. I will see you in the next one.